Trustee Annis?
Yeah. Madam President, I would like to make a motion that we send the complaint to the legal counsel and they determine whether it meets the criteria to move forward to an investigation.
I guess we don't normally vote on items at our work session.
Well, not at least when the cameras are on.
So if the board would like to go outside of the standards, we can, vote to make that an option. I was just hoping to reach a consensus on this one item in order to be able to move forward. If we want to wait till November 27th, we could vote at that time if that's what we want to do.
Well, if you're looking for an informal consensus, then
Madam
I would
President?
also agree with Trustee
Madam President?
Blake.
Just one second.
And I would
She hasn't
agree
been acknowledged.
to send it to
Point of
the
order,
attorney.
Madam President.
Trustee Lakouи?
I was going to ask to respond to what Trustee Gupta was saying. And we wouldn't have to read the full complaint necessarily in order to acknowledge it at a board meeting and then vote whether or not we should pursue it. So we don't have to necessarily air it, word for word as it was submitted to us. There's a way to do that without, running into the same kinds of concerns that she has. But, the point that I made back then too, when we were discussing this, is that we're publicly elected officials and we're representatives of the community. And none of us should be concerned about if communities have their grievances against us and they bring forward those concerns, we can take it in a public setting, just like we've all endured, letters written about us in the board meeting packets, or we've endured things said at the microphone if people don't like what's going on. People are free to say whatever they'd like to say about board members, and none of us should be afraid of that. We should be ready to just deal with it and be done with it and not have to outsource it to lawyers in order to hide from it.
I'm sorry, Trustee Gupta?
Yeah, I think the fact of the matter is you could air it publicly, right? There's not a rule against it. So your point that maybe we wouldn't have to, read the whole complaint out loud doesn't prohibit that from happening. So someone could do that. And false allegations that are very damaging in nature occur on a regular basis. And I find it a little bit ironic that the same person who really made a big deal publicly about hearing some harsh feedback from board colleagues is now saying, oh, just take it on the chin, you're a public elected official. So I think we have a duty to protect both ourselves, our board, our district, and our community from allegations that don't have any merit or based in any fact. And that's why the gatekeeper role is there.
Trustee Weaver?
So the process that was adopted was giving the power to make the decision to the board president to whether they wanted to refer it on, and they could seek counsel. Elected officials, we are the decision makers. We are the finders of fact. So again, the idea that you keep outsourcing stuff to lawyers that are non-elected officials is not part of the process. The decision is supposed to be being made by the president, which again was explained during the adoption of the process is bad to put that power into one person's subjective opinion. Our lack of policy is the problem because again, we're not basing it on a policy to say whether that should be or shouldn't be done. We have to go out and seek lawyers. And that's why, again, in the most recent one filed against me, which I would absolutely say is a baseless claim, Thurn Law Firm was engaged to offer an opinion. I will not say what their opinion was. I'll just say, had President Butel, had you listened to what I said to you in December, it would have saved the district money. These subjective bylaws aren't very good and don't lead to likely outcomes when you try to hold people accountable to them. So we're going to continue to go down this road of we don't have good policies and people are afraid that stuff will be made transparent to the community. If someone files a complaint that is baseless against you, what would be the harm to have it heard at an open meeting, have the finders of fact, which are our elected officials, rule, what does the policy say? Did you violate it? No. So if people are truly filing baseless and false attacks, they will be the ones that get exposed to the process. That's actually why transparency works. It exposes bad actors. So the idea that somehow a gatekeeper was put in place to protect us, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The gatekeeper was put in place because no one on this board wants to make a decision, and even the gatekeeper themselves is not making the decision. They're letting lawyers make the decision. So again, the whole process is a sham. It cost our district money, and it's really everyone at this table not accepting their own responsibility as an elected official to be the finder of fact. If you can't look at a claim and look at our policy and say, is it violated, is it not, yes or no, then that really questions what you're doing on this board.
Trustee Gupta?
We still are the finders of fact. The fact that we send it to legal for them to review based on their legal expertise and objectivity, so that no one on this board is looking at information that could be deemed later to be, subjectively decided on, and have more credibility with the outcome, because it's not someone on the board making the decision. They bring their recommendations, their findings to us. Ultimately, we do decide. We either decide to adopt those findings or not. So the power is still in our hands. We are just enlisting the help of professionals who are outside of this board to help deliberate in a more credible way.
Trustee Blake?
So the policy has already been adopted. This is our policy, whether we like it or now we see that there, and this often happens in laws. You pass something and then later on you see that, oh, there's some holes here that we didn't realize, that we didn't know somebody was going to try to file a complaint against all the officers of the board all at once. I mean, that's not something that most people would expect. But just to make sure people understand what the policy is that was adopted, if somebody makes a complaint, the board somebody, and we have chosen the board president, is the gatekeeper to decide if this complaint is just minimally, could it result in some disciplinary action. They're not deciding whether it is or is not valid, or whether it's true, or any of those things, but just do the allegations reach the level to where somebody could reach disciplinary action. Once that happens, it goes to the lawyer. The lawyer does all the investigation. The lawyer does the report. The report comes back, and then that's our record. And we're acting almost like, and then we're the finder of fact. We say, based on this record and this investigation, what do we vote? Do we vote that it's been substantiated or it's not been substantiated? There is nothing in this policy that allows for any of these alternatives, that allows for the three of us just to vote, that allows for 7 people to vote, even people. There's a specific spot that says a person, I think, that we expect that they will recuse themselves. So that's not in meeting with that expectation. The only thing that's close to what it says in here is giving it to the lawyer, because at least that's a part of the process. That's step 2. We don't have our gatekeeper, but it's at least in the process. The other ones, there's nothing in here to support.
Brief statement. So again, the process was bad from the beginning. We can show that it was complete. All what you raised was all pointed out when it was originally adopted. It was a rush. We have a complaint hearing that was a complete waste of time and effort. And no, the board has shown it's not finder of fact. It's just adopting what the facts are presented by the lawyers. So again, the majority, you're going to do what you want to do. If you want to keep wasting money, keep wasting money. But again, this is completely shown that, again, the board is just completely out of touch with any common sense at this point. Just so, again, keep wasting money.
Trustee Lakouи?
It looks like we're going to hire lawyers to determine whether or not the full board is going to censure some of the board members. That's it. Remember, a censure is just a reprimand. We're hiring lawyers to see if the board needs to reprimand some members.
Trustee Gupta?
I see it differently. I see it as we're hiring lawyers to evaluate an allegation made by a community member that 4 trustees violated a board policy, and to investigate that and see if that's true or not, and bring those findings to the board to either adopt or not adopt, and then, as another step, decide what, if or what to do with that. And while it may not mean much to some others to be censured in a board position, that certainly does mean something to me.
So I see, 5 people who are leaning towards the forwarding it to attorney to decide, 2 that are not. Do we wish to hold off until 11:27 to vote on this officially, since we could not reach a full consensus? Trustee Blake?
If it were up to me, I would be fine voting on this. I'm not trying to shirk my responsibility. I'm just trying to follow the written policy. We have somebody sitting next to me that talks all day long, policy, 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 policy. We have a policy, guess what? So we need to follow it.
So Trustee Blake?
Appointee Blake, I just want to point out, you're actually not following it. You're saying you just want to change it in the way you want. Oh, so it's the closest we can. So again, it doesn't say that. So again, you're right. It
Okay.
doesn't say that because the
So-
policy's bad, which has been the point all along. So you just want to adopt it the way that makes sense to you. End of the day, the majority of the board's going to do what it wants and waste the money. End of the day, to be very frank, I'm pretty sure the complaint's subjective. I would not vote against it because I think it's ridiculous that we try to enforce these subjective policies. So if you're concerned about that part of it, I probably do not think this would merit actual discipline. So again, just keep wasting money.
Trustee Gupta?
Madam President, I move that we make an exception to our rule about voting at a work session and move forward with voting to empower you to take this forward to council.
Okay, so I think we should have 2 votes on that. So your motion to make an exception to vote during a work session, is that
Yep.
correct?
Yes, thank you.
Is there support for that?
I support.
Supported by Trustee Annis. Is there any additional discussion? Trustee Lakouie?
I'm going to vote yes on this motion because I don't want to waste any more time than necessary on this ridiculous complaint process. I think the way we're going about it is wrong. Our complaint process doesn't actually cover this situation, so it would require revision anyways. But I see where the majority of the board is going, and I understand it's going to end up there. So I'm going to vote yes, so that hopefully we can talk about new things on November 27th, and specifically about how can we better focus our resources so that they're helping our students and teachers in the district in the ways that money ought to be spent.
Anyone else? All right, so we have a motion to make an exception to vote during a work session. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That's a 6-1 vote. So Trustee Gupta, did you have then the follow-up motion?
I think Trustee Annis is going to do that.
Trustee Annis?
Madam President, I move that we send the complaint to legal counsel and they can determine whether it meets the criteria to move forward to an investigation.
Trustee, would you mind if that was revised to say, give me just 1 second, that we delegate authority to legal counsel to review the complaint, determine whether it meets the standards for investigation, and proceed accordingly, either by conducting the investigation or notifying the complainant and the board that no investigation will occur.
So moved.
Is there support for that? Trustee Gupta? Discussion at this point? Trustee Lakouie?
I will be voting no on this motion because I don't support directing our money towards lawyers to make this decision about whether or not the board should reprimand board members.
Anyone else? Trustee Alspach?
Point of clarification, just a question. Is this amendment to amend the process, or is this to handle this particular situation?
This is for this specific, complaint.
Okay.
Any changes to the process, which I feel there are some that are warranted, but I think that those should be reviewed after we hear from Miller Johnson's review on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just want to make a point
Trustee
for the
Weaver.
community. So just so everyone knows, the company that we paid to come up with this terrible process is the company that's also helping us revise our policies and processes, which is who that we're going to refer this to be reviewed by. So the only one that's making any money here are district lawyers. And again, it is just an absolute waste. You hear a complaint, elected officials should be able to hear the complaint, look at a policy, and state, does it meet that standard, does it not, and make a decision. I am just blown away that elected officials can't figure that out. So again, the only people getting money and benefiting from this process is Miller Johnson.
Trustee Alspach?
I think it's important that we, as board members, don't take arbitrary and capricious decisions against each other. I do think it's important to have a gatekeeper and have a legal opinion if this is valid or not. And, you know, if you're really concerned about wasting money with lawyers, maybe some of the board members shouldn't sue the district.
Madam President.
Okay,
Madam President, no, I got a brief statement on that. This is such a tired narrative. We would not be being sued for a FOIA violation if we had a proper
Trustee
FOIA
Weaver, let's
policy.
please stick to
we
our
do not have a proper
point of
FOIA
order.
policy, which is why
Point
we are
of
being
order.
sued for a FOIA violation.
Trustee Weaver? So for both, please remember our norms to be respectful, as well as Trustee Weaver to keep
Point
to
of
the
order,
subject.
Madam President, you're interrupting, and he's explaining, you know, the other side of this. You
That-
know,
that what he's
so
explaining
it's
has
not
nothing to
right
do with-
keep- It's not right to keep, it's germane to what was just said.
But I was in the midst of telling her that it was not appropriate.
Were you
So
going to
anyway,
correct the
is there-
false statement that was made?
I apologize.
Anyway, is there any other comments on this motion? All right, then all of those in favor of delegating authority to legal counsel to review the complaint, determine whether it meets the standards for investigation, and proceed accordingly, either by conducting the investigation or notifying the complainant and the board that no investigation will occur, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
That's a 5-2 vote that does pass, and we will forward it to legal